Good evening. Thanks for coming in tonight. Hopefully people in here are juniors and parents, so what we're going to do is kind of take you through everything you should be doing between now and the end of college application season, where to find it, how to find it, all sorts of stuff. In the presentation, there's going to be all sorts of clickable links that Mr. Murphy will click on for us. The presentation will go up on our website tomorrow, so we didn't print anything out for you. It'll all be on there tomorrow. It's also being recorded, so you can go back on our website and watch me whenever you want to. Hopefully not too often, but you're more than welcome to do that as much as you want. These are our counselor or your counseling staff. So if your student's last name begins with A through D, Monica Erdman is their counselor. Mr. Murphy's in our back. He is for students whose last names are E through K. I work with students whose last names are L through R through B. And then Mrs. Morales works with students whose ROC through Z last names. I'm going to do the presentation today mostly as a counselor, but also as a dad. I have a junior who's going to be in Western Michigan next year, and I have a senior in high school right now who's off to Michigan State. So some of this is going to come from a parent perspective also. One of the things that we did with our kids when they started doing the college process was having them create a new email address that we could use for just college stuff, just scholarship things. And then when we were done with it, we could just get rid of the email address, and we didn't have to worry about getting a bunch of random spam junk emails that we didn't really want to have for the girls. So that's something that we did, so you might want to consider checking that out. It also helps to keep everything in one spot. Another thing that we did was when we started visiting a lot of schools, we started to create a spreadsheet. And if you can click on that, Jason. And this was just when we were done with a visit, we could start to put down what did we like, what did we not like, what was the cost, majors, what were the thoughts on it, and everything else like that. So if you're starting to visit schools in the spring and you continue in the fall, you may not remember everything from all of your particular schools. You also are going to want to keep track of deadlines and things, and all sorts of information that you can kind of compare once you're done with all the applications. Another thing that we want to do for our students is identify what types of characteristics are important to them. These are those same types of things when you guys were going out and buying houses. You sat down with the realtor and you said, we want to be in this city, and we want to live in a cul-de-sac, we want to be in this particular school district, we want this size of a house. We want your kids to do the same thing. What's important to them as they start to look at schools? Geographic location. Sometimes kids don't want to be, how far away from Saline do you want to be? Kids may also want to go someplace warm, someplace out east, someplace down south. So what is important to them in terms of like geographic location? For the most part, college is not free, it's expensive, okay? So that cost is going to be a big factor in terms of where kids go and where kids apply. Major, we always want to make sure that kids are going to a school that has their major. It is also perfectly fine if your students graduate high school and don't know what they want to do. They're going to be 17 or 18 years old, that's okay. They really have until the end of their sophomore year to kind of figure out what they want to do and what they want to major in. Size. Sometimes kids will say, even though we're a very big high school, kids sometimes tell us Saline is too small, I want to go someplace huge, okay? That's fine. Or they want to go someplace small, big, what is your thing? How big of a school do you want to go to? A lot of kids might want that whole Big Ten college football Saturday experience, okay? So just things that are important to them. Do we want to go to a public, private? What types of activities do they have? How selective of a school do we want to go to? So just start to gather things that are important to your kids. Research your schools. Can you click on the admissions requirement? I'm just picking on Michigan State right now. So the schools don't make it hard to kind of find what they want from your kids. Okay, so if you just went to the admissions page, it can give you right there a first-year applicant checklist, and it'll tell from Michigan State, for example, what they want your kids to send in. Gives you all the directions and stuff. If you can just go back to the slideshow.
What's that?
Can you just go back to the slides? Thank you. Can you go back? There you go. We want you to start to create a list of schools that you're interested in. Okay? When we come back from summer break, that's when you really should have the list. So right now, one of the things you should be doing is just creating that list. What sounds good? You'll start to pare that down. You should start to visit schools where you look at costs, things like that. You should be making campus visits. This is pretty easy to find. You can just go to the main page or the admissions page on the website. And once again, at Michigan State, if you look up top, In the upper right-hand corner is the visit tab, okay? And you can just set up visits that way. They don't make it difficult to find because each of your students represent probably close to $30,000 a year, so they want you to be able to go on campus. Identify which schools need a letter of recommendation. Most schools will not need a letter of recommendation from a teacher. But once again, if you went to that first year checklist of what they're asking for students, if a school does need a letter of recommendation, chances are it's going to be from a core teacher. English, math, science, social studies, or world language. So if they do need one, you should start to identify in the spring, who do I want to write me a letter of recommendation? Okay? If your students are those STEM or engineering kids, your letter of recommendation should probably come from a math or science teacher. Okay? Ask that person in the spring, I'm going to be applying for college admissions in the fall, would you be able to write me a positive letter of recommendation? We'll talk about Common App in a few minutes, but when we start to do your applications, you start to add schools to your applications, that's when you can start to invite people to your application to upload a letter, okay? When you come back in this fall, remind them again, Mr. Smith, you said you'd write me a letter of recommendation, do you need anything else from me? And just kind of remind of your deadlines. In the summer, continue to research schools, continue to make campus visits. Summer's a good and bad time to make your campus visits. It's a good time because a lot of times parents may have some more time off, kids aren't in school, but the bad part is you might go to like Michigan State and look around and it's like, wow, this isn't as bad as what I thought. No, because 46,000 students are home, okay? So it's a good time, it's also a bad time. Colleges will also have a lot of their big admissions days in the summer. For instance, we keep picking on Michigan State. They will have their green and white days in the summer, which are their kind of big signature events for admissions. You can go on and register for those events if you would like to do that. During the summer, start to narrow down your list. Generally, students will apply to anywhere from 4 to 7 schools. We've had kids apply to 20 or 30 schools, which is a lot because there's also application fees that go along with that. So when kids come back with that list, we really want to ask them, would you be comfortable going to all of these schools? Sometimes kids will say, well, no, I'm not going to go there. Why are you applying? Okay? So we want to make sure that you're comfortable. We encourage students, if you really want to go to a school and it's a REACH school, that's perfectly fine to have on your application. Okay? A REACH school is essentially that school where it's like, I don't quite have what they're looking for, but I'd really like to go there. Okay? You'll never know if you get in if you don't try. What we don't want to have is all REACH schools. Okay? We want to at least have one safety school, meaning I've got 3-7, and I'd be fine going to an Eastern. I know I can get in there. That's a safety school. Okay? So that's what you're going to kind of do when you make your list. Whatever you're doing for your applications, make sure you know your deadlines. You're going to hear counselors talk a lot about November 1st is a big deadline. Some schools are going to have that January 1st, but just know which kind of deadlines you're working off of. When you come back in the fall, that's when you should have the list, okay? That's really not going to change. You might have 1 or 2 that's a little bit different, but for the most part, that should be pretty much solidified when your students come back. The second Wednesday when we come back in the fall, we will have a class of 2026 class meeting with your students. At that time, we're going to go over all things kind of college and post-high school related. Your student at that time will also get an individual appointment time with your counselor. We'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes going over graduation information, as well as anything related to post-high school things with your students. We'll talk about college applications, transcripts, letters, everything that we need to know for them, okay? But that'll all happen in the fall. Once again, follow up with anybody who asked for a letter of recommendation if you need it. If you need to take the standardized test again, okay? Most schools are test optional, meaning you can choose to send your test scores in to that college, or you don't have to. If you don't send your test scores in, if they're test optional, that just means everything else that you have to send them on your application is going to be weighted a little bit heavier, okay? So sometimes when we talk about test scores, it's generally stuff for admissions if they need it, but test scores are also tied to a lot of merit-based scholarships at that university or at that college. So if you need to retake a test, you can do that in the fall. There's a couple test dates before that November 1 deadline. In about a 6-week period during September and October, we host about 80 colleges that will come in here. It's pretty busy in the counseling office. That's a great time when we encourage all of your students to come and visit with the reps. Even if you've been on campus, it's a good time to meet with them. They want to put a name to a face, you get a chance to ask some individual questions, and also these are the students that are going to be reading your applications to determine if you've been admitted or not admitted. Okay? So it kind of shows some of that desire to attend a school the more often you meet with people. We will have a financial aid night in September. We don't have a date set yet. We're waiting to hear back when the auditorium is open for us. But we will have somebody from the University of Michigan Financial Aid Office come in and kind of walk parents through the process of applying for FAFSA, or financial aid. That will open on October 1st, and once again, knowing our deadlines, we want to try to wrap up all of our applications by November 1st. After our application season, we got to figure out how to pay for this. So that's generally when we turn our attention to scholarships. Okay? So there's a ton of different scholarships that are out there. We'll go over some of those in a couple minutes on some slides, but that's generally when students will turn their attention to the scholarship piece of things. Then when you hit winter or spring, your deadline for deciding and making that commitment to which college you're going to go to is May 1st. Okay? So that is the absolute deadline for all of that. So you want to make sure that you're going to spend that kind of February, March-ish. You're going to look over all of your admissions letters that you've applied to or that you've been accepted to. How much is the cost going to be for all of these? Get that spreadsheet back out. What did we like? What did we not like? And try to make that decision from that point. But that's really kind of what we're doing in that winter or spring. How do I search for schools? There's a lot of different factors that you're going to use to search, but once again, you want to go back to that list of what's important to you. Okay? So a lot of these different search sites are going to have different filters, and we'll show you one at the end, where you start to put in the factors that are important. I want to go to the Midwest. I want to go study business. I want to whatever it is. So you put your factors in, and it will start to give you schools that match your characteristics. So there's a couple different sites up there. We don't need to go to them, but that's a good place to do those. And once again, after you start to get that list of places, put it back on that chart to keep everything in one spot. How do you figure out what school is right for you? Know what your GPA and test scores are, okay? If you don't know that, if your child can go on Power School and you can pull up your GPA, the GPA that they're going to pull up if you go to Power School is your unweighted GPA, okay? So know what your test scores are, know what your GPA is, to kind of get a gauge of what types of school you can be applying to, or would have a chance of getting into. We want to also know what your career goals are and your strong subjects, okay? If the thought of being a doctor sounds really amazing to you, but you do not want to take human body systems at the high school because we had to dissect something, that's probably not the best route for you, okay? So know what subjects you're strong in. Identify what your requirements are, okay? What type of college do you want to go to? A 2-year? Do you want to go to a 4-year? A public, a private? Where, what types of location? Do you want to go to like a city, suburb? Once again, like price range, entrance requirements, all of those things. We also want to make sure that when we're doing the visits and things, that keep in mind as parents that this is our kids' journey and not ours. I took my daughter down to, they love it when I tell stories about them to everybody, but I took my daughter down to Miami of Ohio where Mr. Murphy went, and I love Miami of Ohio. It's gorgeous if you've ever been there, and it's one of the like public Ivy League schools, so it's a fantastic academic school, and we're walking around, and I'm like, what do you think? And she says, the buildings look old. And I'm like, well, they're supposed to look old because it's like an Ivy League type school, and that building that's under construction right over there looks old too, even though it's brand new. So it's her journey, not mine. So just keep that in mind as you go to these places. Once again, we want to talk about making sure you get on campus visits. If anybody in here is planning on applying down south, out west, far away where it's like, yeah, I don't know as if we can kind of go to all these places and actually go on campus. You don't need to click on it, Jason, but there's a link right there for some virtual tours, which are pretty good. It's better than nothing, but it can't really replace getting on campus. Then you need to know how colleges are going to evaluate you in your application. I say this as a proud Central Michigan alum. They're really going to look, the Centrals, Eastern, Westerns of the world, they're really going to look at what your GPA is, and that's about it. Okay? If you're applying to some more selective schools, like a U of M, for instance, there's a whole portion that goes with that. There's going to be essays, activities. There's a whole piece of on parents that they're going to know. They want to know where mom went to high school, where mom graduated college, where dad went to high school, where dad graduated college, family income, siblings. They want to know all of it. Depending on the type of school that you're going to go to, rigor is very important. Okay, you're going to hear that word if you're applying to Michigan. Did you challenge yourself within the scope of the curriculum? When they talk about rigor for Michigans of the world, how many core classes did you take? How many AP classes did you take? Okay, that's what they want to know. Is it okay to take some PEs and some arts? Yep, but they want to make sure that you're taking a lot of core credits. Do they want to know what your activities are, leadership, things like that? And a couple quick stories. So when we talk about campus visits, it's important. When my oldest daughter was going through as a senior, Grand Valley, which is a wonderful school, was on the top of her list. So we go on our Grand Valley tour, we're walking around, looking at everything, and we get to the dorms, we walk in. They're beautiful dorms, by the way, they're pretty much brand new. Her face just deflated. For whatever reason, she didn't like the dorms, and at that point, Grand Valley was out for us. But had we not gone on the campus visits, she might have enrolled as a freshman and may not have had a good experience. Okay? So sometimes you just can't replicate those things. We also talked about small schools, large schools, things like that. Another quick story. We used to host a college panel night here, and we would have a rep from Eastern, Western, Central, Grand Valley, U of M, MSU, and then Hope College was our small school. So the day, this was in the winter, the day before the day of our college panel night, I had a mom come in because her son just graduated from Saline High School the year before, and he went to Hope. So she comes in the middle of winter, and she's got this pair of boots, and she says, "The Hope rep is going to be here tonight. My son goes to Hope. Can you take these winter boots and give them to the Hope rep so she can take them back to him on campus?" I'm looking at her like, there's no way I'm going to give your son's boots to the Hope rep to take back to your kid and try to hunt him down. And she said, no. The Hope rep called all of the parents of the Saline alumni who go to Hope to let them know that she was going to be in town if they needed to bring anything back to their kid. Okay? So you just don't get that type of service from your Michigan States, which are fantastic schools. They're just really big. Okay? So kind of some differences between big and small schools. Speaking of small schools, if you've ever been on websites or talked to reps from small schools, they're going to talk about tuition, okay? And you'll see this astronomical figure for small schools, for small private schools. And a lot of times it scares parents off, okay? As well if I'm, once again, I have a senior, if I'm looking at something and I'm seeing a $7,000 price tag, we're going to keep looking, okay? But just a little thing about that. Jason, if you can click on that. Average cost of attendance at Hope, if you can go down, and right there, total budget. $71,580, okay? Huge figure, okay? Jason, if you can go back to the slide and click on the Albion College scholarships. These are their merit-based scholarships. So a 3.8 is still a really good grade point average, but it's not like a 4.0 or a 4.2. They're gonna give you $40,000 right off the top, okay? So point being, a lot of these small schools, private schools, will advertise this huge number for tuition and your all-in product, but they will also give you a huge scholarship for decent grades. Okay, so it's going to bring the cost down to about what you would pay at like a Michigan State for most schools. So point being, if your student's interested in small schools, don't let the price tag scare you off, at least apply, and if they're interested, and kind of see what the price and cost comes for everything. This past fall, Governor Whitmer signed the Community College Guarantee. If you're not familiar with that, you don't need to click on those, Jason, but those are links. Community College Guarantee guarantees free tuition for students if you live within the community college district. So for instance, you have to be a Michigan resident, high school graduate, or GED. For Washtenaw Community College, you reside within Washtenaw County, apply for FAFSA, which once again is financial aid, and you have to be a full-time student, meaning you're taking 12 or more credits. If you do all those things, you can go to community college for 2 years for free. Okay? So if you're that student who doesn't necessarily need that whole kind of freshman dorm experience, you can save a lot of money over the course of 2 years. Especially now, a lot of kids are doing grad school stuff, and you can kind of apply that money towards some of that later on. If you do end up doing the community college guarantee and going to a community college, The one thing you're going to want to talk to a counselor there before you register for any classes is tell them what your plan is. I want to plan to go to Washington Community College for 2 years, and then I want to transfer to Michigan State. And the community colleges will pull out a Michigan transfer agreement, which will talk about which classes you can take at Washington Community College that they guarantee will transfer to these particular colleges in Michigan. Okay? So if that's the route you want to take, there's a little piece of advice on some of those. Criteria for college admissions. They're going to want to know their class rank and GPA. Okay? That's going to be on your transcript as long as your core classes. And we'll have a picture of a transcript here in a minute. I'll show you that. As kind of a rule of thumb, even in senior year, it's funny, we're starting to do scheduling, and we have some of our freshmen who are like, I'm going to take all my card classes now because when I'm a senior, I'm just going to kind of coast by with PE and art and stuff like that. Well, in reality, you're not. Colleges still want to see 3 to 4 core classes each trimester. Colleges are going to look at trends. They want to see a consistent GPA from 9th grade through 11th grade, because essentially when you apply for colleges, that's going to be factored through your 11th grade year. Okay? It's kind of locked in at that point. They also want to see upward trend in grades. Occasionally somebody might have a bad trimester. Grandparent died, mom got cancer, parents got divorced, whatever it is. That's life. Life happens. That's okay. If you can kind of rally yourself and do well the next couple trimesters or the next year, kind of going from there. There's also going to be spots on applications to kind of explain what happened. Okay? So people who are admissions officers, they're human too. They've got kids, they know that stuff happens. Okay? You just want to be able to explain it. Once again, if you need to have test scores sent in for evaluation, you're going to have to send those through the testing agency. Depending on the university, they're going to want to see your extracurricular community service activities. We talked about letters of recommendation. We'll talk about essays in a few minutes. If anybody is applying to like a U of M, and I say that because we have a ton of kids who are applying, so I'll use them as an example. In addition to U of M wanting a particular GPA, particular test scores on a certain number of rigor and AP classes, they also want what is called an expressed desire to attend that particular school. So how do they know you want to go to that school? I went on a campus tour, okay? Mom and dad are alumni, so they took me around, okay? That's not a campus tour. They didn't know you were there. Go register for a campus tour, because then you get in the system, okay? Your email gets in the system, your name gets in the system. It's having interest because you went to the campus tour. They'll be here in the fall. Every fall they're with us, okay? Where the admissions reps will come in, if you remember, in that September and October time. Sign up and come down and meet with the rep. Even if you've been on campus, meet with the rep. That's now another time where you've shown interest in their particular school, okay? So that's that thing where it's the expressed desire to attend their school. And if, once again, we go back to that freshman stuff, if there's any additional criteria that admissions want, then if you have to do your essays, they're going to be reading upwards of 200,000 essays. So everybody's been in band, everybody's played a sport, everybody's been in a National Honor Society. How can you show your uniqueness? Okay? So some things to kind of work on between now and that application season. All your college applications are going to be found on your school's website under undergraduate admissions, or you can just go to Common App. We'll talk about Common App in a few minutes and start your application. The Common App is one application that about 1,000 colleges will use. Okay? So we'll talk about how the Common App looks in a few minutes, but you can start to go there, and that's how most of our kids will apply to colleges. Common App will open on August 1st. When are you going to apply to college? There's generally 4 ways that you're going to apply to college. They're either going to be rolling admission, regular admission, early action, or early decision. So when you apply, they're going to ask you which method are you applying for, okay? A rolling admission, that's essentially just means that applications are read and decisions are made as the applications come in, okay? The earlier you apply, the earlier you're going to find out whether you're in. For kids, getting that first, congratulations, you've been accepted, is a big relief, okay? Somebody wants you. Now we'll just kind of roll the dice on everybody else, but that's a big relief. So rolling, the earlier you can get it in, the earlier you're going to find out. Regular decision, that just means that there is a set deadline, okay? January 15th, for instance, meaning we're not necessarily going to read applications and make decisions before January 15th. We're going to wait until everybody's had their applications turned in by that January 15th or whatever that regular decision is. Then there's two earlies. Early action. That's generally a set deadline, but what that is that, for instance, U of M is an early action school. They say that if you have everything submitted to them, transcript, application fee, by November 1st, that they guarantee by a particular date that they will let you know if you've been admitted or waitlisted or denied. Okay? You don't have to go there if you don't want to. It's not binding. But if you guarantee that you send everything in, we'll guarantee that we'll let you know by a particular date. And then if anybody's planning on applying to some really, really highly selective schools, Ivies, Stanfords, Dukes, Vanderbilts, you have the option to make an early decision, which kind of similar to early action, but that is a binding thing. Okay? Meaning if you get in, pending financial aid, you have to go there and you have to withdraw all your other applications from all your other colleges. Okay? So if that's a binding thing, you really have to know that that's my number one school. I want to go there above all else. How to send your transcripts. Hopefully the students who are in here have gotten 2 or 3 different emails from me about Parchment, about how to set up a Parchment account. Somebody's nodding their head. I love it. Okay. Parchment is how we send transcripts. So students create a Parchment account using your personal email account. Don't use your school one. Set up a Parchment account. You essentially attach yourself to Saline High School. And once you attach yourself to Saline High School, you can go back in there and request transcripts to be sent anywhere. Okay? It's free. It doesn't cost anything. You can send a ton of transcripts if you want. That's perfectly fine. Okay? But that's the method and route that you're going to use to send transcripts. You can go in, once again, your students got a few emails on this from me. You can also go back to the presentation, you can click on the create an account link if you want, but you can start doing that now. You'll generally apply in the fall, but if you start doing your applications over the summer, they're going to want to know, like, what's your class rank, what's your GPA, okay? So rather than emailing your counselor in the summer, you can just go on and request your transcript through Parchment and get all that information right there. You are also going, if you can go back, Jason. We will also pull up Parchment stuff when we meet with your students in the fall during that kind of one-on-one meeting. Parchment is also going to be used in the fall, but it's also going to be used in the spring. That's how you're going to send your final transcript to whichever one college you're going to, okay? But that is on you to send that, not on us, okay? We will approve them, but we don't always know where your students are going to go, okay? So you don't want to be that student who emails your counselor your freshman year in college in the fall, and it says, when you get that email from U of M that says they won't let me apply or register for second semester classes because they don't have my final transcript, okay? And we'll go, yes, we're aware because you need to send it, okay? So make sure we're keeping that Parchment account. That's what that's for. This is what a transcript looks like. On the left-hand side is going to be all of the classes you took, the year you took them, which trimester you took them in, the grade you got, and the credit you received. And the right-hand side is students' current senior year schedule, okay? So they're going to want to know what the senior year schedule is. In the box, down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the number of credits you've earned. It'll give you 2 GPAs, a regular GPA and a weighted GPA. Weighted GPA is for if you've ever taken an AP class, that's a weighted grade point average. So on a normal GPA scale, an A is a 4.0. If you've taken an AP class and got an A, that's a 5.0, okay? So our highest ranked person in our senior class, I think, has a 4.6 or something like that, so well above like an actual 4.0. It'll also do the same thing for your class rank. Class rank is just how far from the top is your GPA, okay? So a lot of colleges want to know what that is as well. Once again, if you need to send your test scores, you're going to send those from those testing agencies, most likely the College Board, because that's the SAT that you took with us. We talked about letters of recommendation. Most schools don't need those, but if you do need them, who to ask and how to get those. So we'll kind of skip over that. I'm not going to talk a lot about NCAA, but if you do have an athlete in Division I or Division II, they need to be eligible to participate. So this would have been something that if they talked to their counselor about, that we would have been keeping track of the particular classes that they need. But you can always go back to the slide and kind of just see where you stand. Scholarships. Scholarships can be found all over the place on the web. They have scholarships for virtually everything. One of the first ones that you're going to see, I generally send it out when it comes to me, is the Coca-Cola Scholarship. Jason, if you can click on that. Coca-Cola Scholarship gives away $150,000, $20,000 scholarships, so it's a lot of money. That Coca-Cola Scholarship will open up on August 1st, but once again, when that comes out to me, I'll forward the link and everything to your council, or to your students, but that's just the Coca-Cola website right there for their scholarship. There's a ton. When you're looking for other scholarships, there's going to be all sorts of need-based scholarships through the next slide that we'll go to in a minute. But when you look at from colleges, like from your particular college, there's merit-based scholarships. Those are generally based on your GPA, and you're generally automatically considered for those when you apply. Similar to like that Albion slide that we had. Those were merit-based scholarships. If you went to the scholarship at the bottom, Jason, this is just going to be an example of Grand Valley. So where do I find it? You can just Google or search on their site for scholarships. And this will be a list of incoming scholarships right there, just for like Grand Valley as an example. I'm not going to click on these, but these are some pretty reliable scholarship search sites that we have. Essentially, the Sally at the bottom is Sally Mae. But essentially, you create a profile of yourself, what you want to study, sometimes gender, where you want to go, and it will start to match you with scholarships that you can apply for. Okay? The big push with scholarships that mom and dad are going to want you to apply for a lot of these because it's a lot of money. Generally, there's a written piece that goes along with all the scholarships, and that's where you kind of get some pushback from your kids. So they'll just run into some of that. Financial aid, we talked about that. Financial aid is FAFSA, stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That will open on October 1st. We'll have that financial aid night sometime in September. You'll get a bunch of emails from me about that. The big thing with FAFSA, if you go to, you don't need to click on these, Jason, but you're going to FAFSA.gov, not FAFSA.com. FAFSA.com is a scam, okay? So make sure you don't go to that. It's a government organization. Common App. So this is the thing that most of your students are going to be using to apply to colleges. It's one application, like 1,000 schools will use. The Common App will open on August 1st, so that's a great time to kind of start getting that application things done. But that's the Common App. When you do the Common App, you're essentially going to be doing two things. So the Common App is very general, okay? So it's not going to ask any information about schools. It's going to ask just all that demographic information, okay? So when you start to add schools, you're going to add a supplemental application for each school, okay? So in this example, if the student's applying to Michigan and Hope, when they send in their application for Michigan, they're going to be sending in the Common App and then Michigan's supplemental application. When they send in the application for Hope, they will get that same Common App that Michigan got, but they'll get Hope's supplemental application. So everybody gets the actual Common App, but then each school just gets their supplemental one. Okay? When you do the Common App, students will generally spend 5 or 6 weeks on that. So it's pretty lengthy, and they want to make sure it's done right. We don't need to go through these, but on here it will give you a step-by-step application guide for Common App. It'll also ask you what questions Common App is going to ask. And then if you click on the bottom one, Jason, the essay prompts, the 2025-26 Common App essay prompts are currently out. So if your student wants to get a head start on those, you're going to be picking one of the, just keep going scrolling down, Jason. There's your essay prompts for, they haven't changed in maybe 5 years, but those are the essay prompts that your students are going to have to choose at least one from, and I think it's 650 word max, okay? So those are the things that students can start to work on now. Essay writing, and this is taken from the University of Michigan. The number one thing admissions officers will tell us when the students write their essays, regardless of how beautiful of an essay they've written, is the number one thing that goes wrong is they don't answer the question, okay? So above all else, when you're starting to do this, make sure at the end of the day, if mom or dad or somebody's proofreading it, go back and ask yourself, did they answer the question, okay? Because that's what you're going to be judged on. Make sure, I'm just going to hit a couple here. It's real easy for students to go through and restate in an essay things that they've already stated in their application, okay? If you're given a chance to tell something else about you, Don't rewrite something that you've already given them, okay? If you're gonna talk about a job that you had, okay, they probably already know about the job you had because you listed it in activities. Michigan, for instance, you're gonna be writing a Common App essay, and you're also gonna be writing 2 essays for like a Michigan. One is gonna be like the Why Michigan essay. So please, above all else, make sure when you are writing that Common App essay, remember that is one that every school is gonna get. So if you're writing about your desire to go to Michigan or something like that, and you're applying to Ohio State and Indiana as well, understand Ohio State and Indiana are going to get that same essay that if you wrote about Michigan, and they're going to probably not want to accept you for that. And then once again, make sure you're proofreading that. And if you can, we talked about uniqueness. If you can try to find those unique characteristics about you, because Michigan will have about 80 or 90,000 applications. They'll have 3 essays each, and each application gets read 3 times. So people at Michigan, for instance, are reading a lot of essays, okay? If you can do something that stands out, that's unique, that's better. It's gonna make an impression on them. There's also no right answer, there's no wrong answer, okay? So long as you've answered the question. Once again, copy of this will be on our website, I believe tomorrow. Monica can put it on there. And we'll have the video up at some point soon as well, and that'll be on our website. You can keep clicking just for a second, Jason. Appley is a good website to go through for college stuff as well. You can do some college matching things with that. So this is just from Appley, and you can go on there and do their college quiz. If you go to the next one. Once again, you're going to select that criteria that's important to you, and after you do that, it will start to give you schools that match your criteria. Okay? So there's a lot of websites that do that, but Appley is a pretty good one. Any questions? Yes? Yeah.
Okay, I'm just wondering when the parchment is updated. So if your student, whether you're going into their freshman year of college, or if you're even in the summer, we just try to grade it into parchment through FX.
So when is Parchment updated? So for our current seniors, Parchment will be updated by grades finalized on like June 6th, okay? For our juniors who are in this presentation, I would give that until probably June 20th, okay? The thing about Parchment too, if you go in there and request your transcripts a couple times, like one after try 1, one after try 2, it's going to be a little deceiving because it's going to show you, it will show you the picture of the transcript that you last requested. So if you think you're requesting a second trimester Parchment transcript, you actually are, but the picture that you will see will be of the last one that you requested. So it's a little bit deceiving on that.
So how do you get the most updated one?
When you request it, that you're going to get the most updated one. It's just going to show you the picture of the last one that you did. Questions? Yeah.
Do you recommend they use the Common App, or what's the pros of using it? It sounds like the colleges have their own application anyway.
Do we recommend using the Common App or a college's own application? So the pros of a Common App are that I can do this one application one time and send it to multiple schools. Even though you're having to do a supplemental one for that particular school, but you don't have to redo all that generic information. Michigan State's a good example because Michigan State has their own application, so they really don't care if you do the Common App or Michigan State's application. If you do like a Michigan State's application or probably any school's own application, it's going to take you a lot less time to do. Okay, but colleges don't care which one you use. Other questions? Yeah. When you're applying for scholarships, do you give an unweighted GPA or weighted GPA? We always tell students to give the highest one. Give the highest one. Not every high school will use a weighted GPA, so when your students are actually doing their applications in college or looking at, a lot of colleges will take out the weight. They'll see the weighted on there, but they'll take out the weighted just to make it consistent and fair for schools across the board. But anytime it asks for a GPA, Always give the highest one. Sometimes it'll ask if it's weighted or unweighted, but if not, always give the highest.
How do you know if you apply on the Common App if that school requires another separate application?
How do you know if you're applying on the Common App if that school requires a separate application? They all do.
Okay.
Yep, so once you put a school on there, like, I'll go for instance, like my oldest daughter, I said goes to Western, so we did the Common App, and then we added Western Michigan on there. She also had Michigan State, some others. So Western's supplemental application was very short. So it only had a couple questions, to where like a Michigan State or a Michigan would have been much lengthier. So they're all gonna want something specific, it's just how many questions and the length of it is gonna be the differing factor.
Just building on that, so are the supplemental applications, like, is there a lot of repetitive information?
Is there a lot of repetitive information on the supplementals? Yes, you're gonna find some of that, but it's also like Miami of Ohio doesn't necessarily know what Michigan's gonna ask. So it's like, you have to kind of ask that Miami of Ohio specific things that I want. Yes?
You do early decision, and then you don't get the financial aid that you think you will get or could get. What if you disagree with college, how would they think you should pay for school?
So if you're doing early decision and you don't get the financial aid package that you want, you're going to be looking at some things with like expected family contributions and stuff. So if that's not necessarily matching up with that financial aid thing, you'll be okay. So they also don't want people to go to the school if it's just going to bankrupt you. So they're good about working with the financial aid office in that because they know that that's a very big decision. Yes, sir.
All this useful for the child that wants to get off.
Okay.
What things do work and don't work?
Okay, so if you're taking a year off, how useful is all this? If you're taking a year off, it's going to be relevant because you're just going to go through the same process the following year. Okay, sometimes students will, if you're taking a year off, a lot of times people also want to know, what are you doing? You know, some of our kids will say, oh, you know, I didn't have great grades in high school, I'm just going to take a year off and then apply. But if you're not taking classes at a community college or something, that GPA is still that same GPA. You know, so sometimes kids will take a year off where it's like, I want to travel, I want to do a gap year, I want to work and save some money, I want to have a chance to do this internship and work with my uncle, whatever it might be. So, but when you do go back, all this stuff is still going to be relevant because you're still going to be using it to apply the following year. Any other questions? Yeah.
If a student decides to go to like Washington, for example, for community college, are they more likely as a transfer student to get into a particular university, or do you feel like that is dependent on what happens in their college?
If a student goes to a community college, do they have a better chance of getting into a particular school?
Yes.
Okay.
Or if they went to Washington, do they have a better chance of getting into a four-year university like state or UM than they would have if they were state?
Depending on the school, okay? So U of M is going to have, you're applying to a particular school within the university, how many transfer students are they going to take, because they're going to keep some spots for transfers, they're going to keep some spots for, you know, high school seniors who are transferring. So a lot of it is going to depend on how you do at the community college. So anything your kids do here shows their potential as to do things in college. Anything your kid does at a community college or a four-year school shows not just their potential, it shows what they can actually do. So, yeah. Are there any other questions? Thank you. Yeah.
Quick question here. On parchment, just looking at it now, if we were to order a transcript today, would we advertise for grades in there by the time we see it, or can we do that by hand?
Okay, if I ordered transcript today, would I have my final trimester 3 grades if it was weighted? So when you go onto Parchment, one of the questions it's going to ask you is, when do you want to send your grades? And it's going to give you 2 options. It's going to give you an option of send now, or the second option will be hold for grades. So if you chose to hold for grades, who works in our office, she's the one who approves all the transcripts. So if it's hold for grades, she will hold on to that request until trimester 3 grades are in there. Anything? Oh, yep.
Are the school application sites the best places to find if you want a specific major, if you have to try and enroll in that college site directly?
Yes, the school websites are going to be the best one to try to find that if you need to enroll in a particular school within the university. Yep. And within that, there's all sorts of different things. Once again, U of M, for instance, School of Engineering is a little tougher to get into because it's small, okay? Versus like the School of Literature, Science, and the Arts, it's a little bit easier to get into because it's so big. And sometimes kids will want to be engineers, but they might go to LS&A and then transfer. So,
Is that pretty common, like the size of the college within the school is kind of how that's dictated? Or
Yeah.
We visited Western and they said, if you want nursing, you have to get accepted as a freshman to get in the program.
and some are different where they don't let you necessarily transfer on those. So, yeah, some are going to be pretty specific for that and when to apply. My daughter just got into the School of Social Work, I don't know, a month or so ago. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Does Saline have like a school profile, that students can get, and is that specific to specific colleges, or how does that?
Does Saline have a school profile? Yep, every school creates a school profile. For instance, if our kids are, a school profile is essentially what our average test scores are, how many AP classes we offer, what our AP scores are, a little bit of information about our school and things. So that gets attached to the Common App from the counselors. So when a college in University of Missouri is reading an application from like Saline from out of state, they've never heard of Saline. So I need to get some context in terms of what kind of student is this at that particular school. Okay, so they want to just kind of get that context to where if we're applying to Michigan, Michigan knows about Saline. So yes, every school gets that school profile. That's something that we create late summer, first week of the school year, and we'll attach that to our Common App as counselors. So every time we send something on our part, they get that school profile also. And yes, in the fall, if you just send an inquiry, we'd be more than happy to give you a copy of that.
And is the profile just averages, or is there percentiles, or?
Averages. Yep.
And do you also have a record of maybe Michigan State or U of M, like how many students from Saline went to it and their profiles?
Do we have a record of how many kids applied to a particular school, like in Michigan or Michigan State, and how many kids got in and what their profile is? No. So I inquired about that with our U of M reps this past year because I wanted to go back 5 years, and just start to look at trends and when was the first time students who got into U of M took AP classes and all of that. So they said they couldn't give that to us. So what I have in my office is this current year's data, but when we start to look at like Michigan's, your students are not necessarily competing against kids from Pioneer and Skyline and Novi, you're competing against everybody else here. So that's kind of where they want that best of the best from each school. If there's no other questions, I appreciate you guys giving up part of your night to come on in. Hopefully it was somewhat useful to you. Jason and I will be here. If anybody has an individual question, you're more than welcome to come on up and ask us. But thank you for coming